Before we begin, I want you to know this. This is an original fictional story, written, adapted, and produced by me for this channel. Every scene you're about to experience was intentionally created. Now, let's begin.
Mrs. Bake saw me, coming out of the developer's building, holding their folder. She didn't say anything, just posted online. Within 48 hours, customers stopped coming. Suppliers demanded cash up front. My mother-in-law stopped looking at me, all because I was seen in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Felicia Duncan Han made the choice on a Tuesday afternoon, while sorting bolts of West African print fabric in the back room of Han Thread and Heritage. It was the smallest possible decision. Just a phone call returned. The woman on the other end had a voice like expensive hand cream, smooth, professional, persistent. Her name was Kim Min-young, Senior Acquisitions Consultant for Hanyul Urban Holdings. She'd called 3 times over the past week. Each voicemail was polite, deferential even, always ending with, "We simply want to present an opportunity." No pressure, just conversation. Felicia had deleted the first 2 messages. But the third one arrived on the same morning. Her mother-in-law had lectured her about ordering too much foreign fabric. And the same afternoon she'd found Minji crying in the bathroom because a classmate told her she smelled like curry, even though they'd had kimchi jjigae for lunch. So when the phone buzzed again, another call from the same Seoul number, Felicia answered. "Mrs. Han," Min-young said warmly, "thank you for taking my call. I know you're busy, I won't take more than 5 minutes." Felicia wedged the phone between her shoulder and ear, continuing to fold fabric. "I'm listening. We're hosting an informal consultation tomorrow. Wednesday, 2 p.m., just coffee and conversation. We have a presentation prepared, market analysis, neighborhood development trends, future projections for Itaewon real estate. Nothing binding. You'd just be gathering information to help your family make informed decisions." A calculated pause. "We understand you handle much of the business operations. We thought you'd appreciate seeing the data." Felicia's hands stilled on a bolt of indigo Ankara print. Information, data, informed decisions. She was always the one gathering information for everyone else. Her mother-in-law relied on her for supplier negotiations. Her husband deferred to her for customer relations. Even her own mother called asking Felicia to explain Korean banking procedures. What harm could there be in simply knowing what the developers were offering? "It's confidential, of course," Min-young added. "Just an exploratory conversation. Many property owners find it helpful to understand their options, even if they're not interested in selling." Felicia glanced toward the front of the shop. Through the doorway, she could see Sun Young meticulously refolding silk handbox a customer had touched. Her mother-in-law's hands moved with the precision of someone who'd done this for 40 years, who believed in doing things the right way, the traditional way, the only way she'd ever known. Asking Sun Young's permission would mean explaining why she wanted the meeting. That would mean admitting she was even considering the possibility. Which she wasn't. She was just gathering information. Wednesday at 2, Felicia heard herself say, "Where?" The consequence arrived before she even reached the meeting. Felicia left the shop at 1:40 p.m., telling Sun Young she had a supplier appointment in Gangnam. Not technically a lie, Hanyul Urban Holdings office was near Samsung Station. She wore her nice blazer, the forest green one she saved for important vendor meetings. Professional, appropriate. The Hanyul offices occupied the 15th floor of a glass tower that smelled like expensive minimalism and ambient electronic music. Min-young met her in a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul's sprawl. The presentation was already loaded on a massive screen. Sleek graphs, 3D renderings of a boutique hotel, phrases like heritage preservation and cultural integration. But what Felicia noticed most was the numbers. The purchase offer, displayed casually on slide 7, as if it were merely one data point among many, was staggering. Enough to pay off any business debt, buy separate apartments for the entire family, fund her children's education through university, and still have enough left for Sun Young to retire comfortably. Enough to never worry about money again. "We're not looking to erase history," Min-young explained, advancing to a rendering of the proposed hotel. "We're looking to elevate it. The ground floor would feature a curated retail space highlighting traditional Korean textiles. We'd even be interested in consulting with your family on authentic design elements. Felicia's throat felt dry. This is just preliminary. Of course, Minyoung smiled, not warmly but not coldly either, just professionally. We're simply showing you what's possible. Seoul's development landscape is shifting rapidly. In the past 5 years, property values in Itaewon have increased by 340%. Buildings that don't modernize often find themselves unable to compete. She gestured at another graph showing declining foot traffic for traditional shops. We're offering a partnership, really. A way to preserve your family's legacy while securing your financial future. Felicia should have left then. She should have thanked them politely, taken their folder of materials and walked away. Instead, she asked questions. How long would the renovation take? What exactly would the retail space include? Could they guarantee employment for any current family members who wanted it? The questions came from the part of her that had always been responsible, that had always planned ahead, that had always tried to see every angle before anyone else had to worry about it. Minyoung answered each one with data, timelines, projections, possibilities. They talked for 70 minutes. When Felicia finally left, folder tucked under her arm, business card in her pocket, she felt simultaneously lighter and heavier. Lighter because now she understood the full scope. Heavier because understanding meant she could no longer pretend the option didn't exist. She was halfway to Itaewon Station when she saw Mrs. Beek. Mrs. Beek, who owned the Korean-Chinese restaurant 2 doors down from Han Thread and Heritage. Mrs. Beek, who had known Sun Young for 30 years. Mrs. Beek, who was emerging from a different glass tower carrying shopping bags and who froze when she saw Felicia. Their eyes met. Mrs. Beek's gaze dropped to the folder under Felicia's arm, the one with Hanyul Urban Holdings minimalist logo embossed on the cover. Felicia SSI, Mrs. Beek said carefully, fancy building. Felicia's mind raced. She could explain, should explain, but explaining meant revealing the meeting, which meant supplier meeting, she said quickly, too quickly. New fabric vendor, they're based here. Mrs. Beek's expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes shifted. Ah, supplier. They said their goodbyes, polite, brief. Felicia watched Mrs. Beek walk toward the subway entrance, those shopping bags swinging with each step. It would be fine. Mrs. Beek wouldn't say anything. Why would she? By Thursday morning, 4 customers had mentioned hearing something. The first was Mr. Park, a regular who bought traditional fabrics for his wife's hanbok-making hobby. He paid for his silk with cash, always cash, but before leaving he paused at the door. Mrs. Han, he said quietly, if your planning changes, I understand, times are difficult, but I hope you'll give loyal customers notice. Felicia blinked, notice I'm not. But he was already gone, the door chime still ringing. The second was a tourist couple from Chicago who'd visited 3 times over the past month, photographing fabrics for their interior design blog. They seemed surprised to find the shop still open. We heard you were closing, the woman said. Somebody posted on a neighborhood forum that the building was sold. That's not, Felicia started, but her voice snagged on something between truth and denial. Sun Young emerged from the back room, her expression sharp. The customers left without buying anything. By lunchtime, Felicia had checked 4 different Itaewon community forums. 3 of them had posts asking if Han Thread and Heritage was closing. One specifically mentioned new development and Hanyul Urban Holdings. Mrs. Beek hadn't said anything. She'd posted something. In Korean online forums, community news spread like water through cracked pavement, seeping everywhere, impossible to contain. In neighborhoods like Itaewon, where longtime business owners had survived together through economic crashes and pandemic shutdowns, information about who was selling carried weight. It signaled which buildings might be next, which streets were changing, whether it was time to panic or time to negotiate. And now everyone thought Han Thread and Heritage was selling. Because Felicia had been seen with the folder in that building. Explain, Sun Young said. She was standing in the doorway to the back room, arms crossed, her small frame radiating the kind of authority that didn't require volume. Felicia's mouth felt full of cotton. It was just a meeting. What meeting? The development company sent, they wanted to present. They wanted to present and you went. Sun Young's voice was perfectly controlled, which made it worse. Without discussing with family, without telling Jun Seo, without asking me. I was gathering information, Felicia said. That's all, just seeing what they were offering so we'd be informed if they contacted us officially. They contacted you officially, you responded officially. Sun Young's jaw tightened. And now the entire neighborhood thinks we are selling. I'll explain to people, I'll post online that it's not. Explain what? Sun Young interrupted. That my daughter-in-law meets with developers in secret, that she makes decisions about our family business without consulting family. The word our landed like a slap. Our family business. Not your position, not your role. Our, but only when it meant obligation. I didn't make any decisions, Felicia said carefully. I just listened, that's not a crime. Listening in secret is still secret. Sun Young's eyes were hard. In Korea, appearance matters as much as truth. You know this, you understand this, yet you chose appearance that makes us look desperate. The shop phone rang, neither of them moved to answer it. I was trying to help, Felicia said quietly. Then you should have helped by asking. Sun Young turned back toward the storeroom. Now you help by fixing what you broke. The phone stopped ringing. In the silence, Felicia heard the fabric of her carefully constructed roll beginning to tear. She tried to fix it the way she always fixed things, by explaining, mediating, smoothing over. That evening she posted in all the neighborhood forums, polite, professional, cheerful even. Hello neighbors, there seems to be confusion about hand thread and heritage. We are not closing or selling. I met with a development company purely to understand what's happening in our changing neighborhood, as many property owners are receiving similar offers. Our family remains committed to serving this community as we have for 40 years. Thank you for your continued support. She added emojis, a heart, a traditional Korean building, a folded hand symbol for gratitude. By Friday morning, she realized she'd made it worse. The responses came in waves. Understanding what's happening sounds like you're preparing. Why meet with them at all if you're not interested? My family got offers too. We didn't take meetings, we said no immediately. That's commitment. Changing neighborhood equals code for selling to highest bidder. And then, buried in a thread on the third forum. I heard the offer was huge, multi-million. If you got that kind of money on the table and you're still deciding, that says everything. Felicia stared at her phone. She hadn't mentioned the offer amount. Which meant someone else had. Which meant Min Young from Hanyul Urban Holdings was talking. Which meant this was all strategic. She understood then, too late, how these development deals worked. Companies didn't just make offers, they created pressure, they seeded information. They let neighborhoods think a sale was inevitable so other property owners would panic and sell too, creating entire blocks available for redevelopment. It was a strategy as calculated as any marketing campaign, and she'd walked right into it by taking that meeting. The phone rang again. A supplier from Dongdaemun calling to check on the business situation before fulfilling their standing fabric order. Felicia assured them everything was fine. The supplier said they'd need payment up front this month instead of the usual net 30 terms, just until things stabilize. She hung up and pressed her palms against her eyes. Jun Seo came home at 6:30, smelling like soju and stress. He worked in pharmaceutical sales, a job that had nothing to do with textiles but everything to do with hierarchy. He'd learned early to avoid conflict by becoming invisible, a skill he'd perfected into an art form. But even he couldn't ignore this. My mother called me at work, he said, setting down his bag, 4 times. Felicia was making dinner, myeok guk seaweed soup, the kind Sun Young had taught her to make when she first married into the family. She kept stirring. I can explain. She said you met with developers. I did once to gather information. Without telling anyone. I didn't think, Felicia stopped. It was supposed to be confidential. In Itaewon, Jun Seo's laugh was short, bitter. You thought you could have a secret meeting in Itaewon. He was right. Itaewon wasn't like Gangnam, where anonymity came with the crowd. Here, everyone knew everyone. Your business was everyone's business. Privacy was a Western concept that didn't translate well to neighborhoods built on 40 years of shared survival. Your mother thinks I went behind her back, Felicia said. You did go behind her back. And I was trying to protect her. The words came out sharper than she intended. She doesn't handle stress well. I wanted to understand what we were dealing with before. Before what? Before discussing it with your husband? Jun Seo's voice rose slightly. For him, that was yelling. Before talking to the woman who built this business, before treating us like we're part of the family decisions. Felicia turned off the stove. They offered 4.8 billion won, she said quietly. The number sat between them like a living thing. Jun Seo was quiet for a long time. He swallowed. That's more than I'll make in my entire career. I know. That's enough to send both kids to university abroad. That's enough for my mother to stop working. That's enough for, he stopped. Did you tell her the amount? No. Are you going to? Felicia looked at her husband, this man she'd married 15 years ago, who'd been gentle and quiet and safe. Who'd promised her they'd figure things out together. Who'd then spent those 15 years letting his mother and his wife orbit around each other while he hid in spreadsheets and sales quotas. I don't know, she said honestly. Jun Seo nodded slowly, then he pulled out his phone and started typing. What are you doing? Felicia asked. Calculating, he said. If we sold and invested conservatively, we could generate approximately 192 million won annually just from interest. That's more than the shop makes in a good year. That's before splitting the principal among family members. Felicia's stomach dropped. You're seriously considering this? You seriously met with them? He looked up from his phone. Don't pretend you went out of pure curiosity. You went because some part of you is exhausted, some part of you wants out. He wasn't wrong. But hearing him say it felt like betrayal anyway. Your mother will never agree, Felicia said. My mother, Jun Seo said carefully, is 72 years old. She wakes up at 4:30 every morning. She has arthritis in both hands. She pretends she doesn't, but I see her take painkillers. She's tired too. That shop is her life. Exactly, Jun Seo met her eyes. It's her life, not necessarily ours. The conversation Felicia should have stopped happened 3 days later, on Monday evening, during what was supposed to be a family dinner. Sun Young had prepared galbai jjim, braised short ribs, the kind that took hours of careful attention. She served it the traditional way with banchan arranged just so, rice in proper bowls. The children ate quickly, sensing tension even if they couldn't name it. Minji asked to be excused early. Daniel followed 30 seconds later. Then it was just the adults. Sun Young set down her chopsticks. We need to discuss the situation. Felicia's pulse quickened. She'd planned to raise the topic gently, gradually over time, but Jun Seo spoke first. How much did they offer? He asked Felicia. Sun Young's gaze sharpened. What? The development company, Jun Seo continued, not looking at his mother. When you met with them, what was the offer? Felicia shot him a look. This wasn't the plan. They hadn't agreed on this approach. I want to know too, Sun Young said coldly, since apparently everyone knows except me. Felicia felt the room shrinking. It's not relevant if we're not selling. The number is always relevant, Jun Seo said. He'd shifted into his business mode, the one he used with hospital procurement managers. Calm, rational, detached. Market information helps us understand our position. If we're rejecting an offer, we should know what we're rejecting. Sun Young's expression was stone. Tell me. So Felicia told her. 4.8 billion won. Sun Young didn't react. Didn't gasp, didn't nod, didn't move. She just absorbed the information with the same steady discipline she brought to everything else. Then she said, that's more than I expected. The admission shocked Felicia more than anything else could have. You've thought about this, she asked. I'm old, not stupid. Sun Young's voice was matter of fact. Of course I've thought about it. Property developers have been circling Itaewon for 3 years. I knew eventually they would come for us too. Jun Seo leaned forward. If you knew, why didn't we discuss it as a family? Because discussing invites consideration. Sun Young looked at her son. And consideration invites doubt. I built this business with your father. I can't sell what we built. Even if keeping it means financial struggle, Jun Seo asked. Even if the neighborhood is changing and foot traffic is down 30% from 5 years ago, even if, Sun Young said firmly. Silence. Felicia could feel the conversation splitting into dangerous territory. She should mediate, should soften, should translate between these two people who loved each other but spoke different languages of duty and pragmatism. Instead, she heard herself say, "What if there was a compromise?" Both of them looked at her. "I asked the developers," Felicia continued, the words coming faster now, "about keeping the shop. They're building a boutique hotel. What if we negotiated to maintain the ground floor retail space? They said they wanted authentic heritage elements. We could operate the shop within the new building, same location, new structure, financial security plus continuation." She'd been thinking about this since the meeting. It seemed elegant, practical, a bridge between tradition and change, her specialty. Jun Seo's expression brightened. That could work. Sun Young's face remained unreadable. "We'd have to contact them to discuss terms," Felicia added. "But it's an option, middle ground." "Middle ground," Sun Young repeated slowly. "You would give them our building, our home, and they would let us rent space in their hotel." "Not rent, negotiate partnership, ownership stake potentially." "Partnership," Sun Young's laugh was short, sharp. "You trust developers to honor partnership." "I trust contracts," Felicia said. "Legal agreements. If we negotiate now while they want the property, we have leverage." Jun Seo was nodding. "She's right. Once we show serious interest, they'll be willing to accommodate. We could structure a deal that protects the shop legacy while securing everyone's financial future." The way he said everyone's future made Felicia's skin prickle. He was already imagining it, already calculating his freedom. Sun Young stood abruptly. "You talk like this is decided." "It's not decided," Felicia said quickly. "We're just exploring." "You explored when you took the meeting." Sun Young's voice was ice. "You explored when you shared the number. Now you explore compromise, always exploring, never committing." She looked directly at Felicia. "But exploration still means movement, and movement in their direction means eventual surrender." She left the table. Jun Seo waited until they heard her bedroom door close. Then he looked at Felicia. "Call them," he said quietly. "Your mother is right, we shouldn't." "My mother is old-fashioned, she doesn't understand modern business development." He pulled out his phone again, already typing. "If this compromise is possible, we need to secure it before they move on to other properties. Contact Min Young, set up another meeting, get terms in writing." Felicia's hands felt cold. This wasn't supposed to happen this fast. "You started it," Jun Seo said, not unkindly. "Now we finish it properly, with a plan, with structure, the way you always do things." He was right. She'd opened this door. Now she had to walk through it. Min Young answered on the second ring. "Mrs. Han, what a pleasant surprise." "I wanted to discuss potential partnership structures," Felicia said, trying to sound professional instead of desperate. "If we were to consider your offer, would there be room to negotiate maintaining retail space in the new development?" The pause lasted 3 seconds, long enough for Felicia to hear her own heartbeat. "Absolutely," Min Young said warmly. "We're very interested in authentic integration. When can you come in to discuss specifics?" They scheduled for Thursday. 2 days away. Felicia hung up and stared at her phone. The screen showed 9:47 p.m. In 48 hours, she'd be back in that conference room with those floor-to-ceiling windows, negotiating the future of a business she'd married into but never officially owned. She should feel relieved. Instead, she felt like she was standing at the top of a very tall building, looking down. Thursday's meeting was different. Min Young had brought a colleague, a man named Lee Sang-min, head of commercial development. They had new renderings prepared, including one showing a ground-floor heritage textile gallery with Han Thread and Heritage's name etched into the glass facade. "We envision this as a flagship cultural space," Lee explained, gesturing at the glossy images. "Tourists want authentic Seoul. We give them authentic Seoul with modern comfort. Your shop becomes the centerpiece, the story we tell international guests." It looked beautiful. Too beautiful. "What would the terms be?" Felicia asked, "for the retail space?" "We'd structure it as a long-term lease," Min Young said. 20 years, favorable rates locked in regardless of market changes. You'd maintain operational control. We'd handle building maintenance, security, utilities. "And our family's living space," Felicia pressed, "the residence upstairs." "Would be converted to hotel rooms," Lee said frankly. "But the sale price accounts for relocation. You could purchase excellent apartments in quieter neighborhoods, modern buildings with elevators, parking, security." better for elderly family members. Felicia thought of Sun Young climbing 3 flights of stairs every day, pretending her knees didn't hurt. Could we see a draft lease agreement, she asked, before making any decisions. Of course, Minyoung slid a folder across the table. We prepared preliminary terms, nothing binding, just framework for discussion. Felicia opened the folder. The lease terms looked reasonable. Monthly rent was below market rate, the duration was solid. There were clauses about heritage preservation, design consultation, family employment priority. But buried on page 7, in language that required 3 readings to parse, was a section about operational standards. The hotel would maintain aesthetic consistency across all ground floor retail, which meant Han Thread and Heritage's inventory, displays, and design choices would need approval. From the hotel. From Hanyul Urban Holdings. Who would own the building? This approval clause, Felicia said carefully, it seems restrictive. Standard commercial lease language, Lee assured her. Just ensures the retail experience aligns with the hotel's brand. You'd still have full autonomy on product selection, pricing, customer service. But if you disagree with our choices, we discuss, we collaborate, we find solutions that work for everyone. The words sounded reasonable. They would sound reasonable to Junseo too. That's what made them dangerous. Felicia took the folder home. She showed it to Junseo that night, after the kids were asleep. He read through it carefully, making notes in the margins with a mechanical pencil. This is generous, he said finally. Below market rent, long-term security, employment priority. This is more than I expected them to offer. Look at page 7, Felicia said. He flipped back, read the approval clause. That's standard, he said. I see similar language in pharmaceutical supplier contracts all the time. It's just maintaining brand consistency, makes sense for a hotel. It means they control what we sell. It means they approve what you sell, there's a difference. Junseo set down the pencil. Felicia, this is compromise, real compromise. My mother gets to keep the shop name, we get financial security, everyone wins. Except we don't own anything anymore, we're tenants. We'd be tenants with 4.8 billion won in the bank. He said it gently, like he was explaining something simple to a child. That's generational wealth. That's Minji and Daniel never worrying about money. That's my mother resting after 40 years of waking up before dawn. He wasn't wrong. The numbers made sense. The logic made sense. So why did Felicia's stomach feel like she'd swallowed broken glass? I need to think about it, she said. Think fast, Junseo replied. Minyoung said they're looking at other Itaewon properties. If we wait too long, they might withdraw the offer. That was a pressure tactic. Felicia knew that. But it still worked. She didn't tell Sun Young about the lease terms. Not yet. First, she needed to prove the shop could survive independently. Needed to show that they didn't need to sell, didn't need to compromise, didn't need developers defining their future. So on Friday morning, Felicia made another choice that seemed reasonable. She placed a large inventory order. Han Thread and Heritage's supplier relationships were Felicia's domain. She'd spent years building connections with fabric importers in Lagos, Accra and Johannesburg, creating a unique inventory blend that no other Seoul shop offered. African wax prints alongside Korean traditional silks. Ankara next to hanbok fabric. Cultural fusion that reflected her own life. The new order was ambitious. 15 million won worth of premium fabrics, exclusive prints, high-end materials that would attract serious buyers and prove the shop's viability. She had the supplier contacts. She had the market knowledge. She had the credit line, barely but enough. What she didn't have was Sun Young's approval. But asking for approval would mean explaining why she needed to prove anything. Which would mean revealing the lease agreement. Which would mean admitting she was seriously considering it. So Felicia placed the order herself using the shop's business credit account. The supplier in Lagos confirmed shipment, 4 weeks to arrival. She'd have time to generate buzz, pre-sell to regular customers, create demand before inventory arrived. She posted on social media, new exclusive collection, limited quantities, traditional meets contemporary, book appointments now. The responses were tepid. 12 likes, 3 comments, 1 share. Normally her posts got triple that engagement. She checked the neighborhood forums again. New thread, which Itaewon shops are actually staying. Someone had created a list. Han thread and heritage was marked uncertain with a question mark. Felicia's hands shook as she typed another clarification post, another reassurance, another promise. But she could feel it happening, the slow erosion of customer trust. People were already mourning the shop's closure, already adjusting to its absence. Her presence on forums looked desperate now, defensive. The fabric shipment was scheduled to arrive in 4 weeks. She had 4 weeks to turn this around. She worked harder than she'd ever worked, updated the website daily, called every regular customer personally, offered discounts, loyalty programs, consultation services. She stayed at the shop until 9 p.m., then went home and managed social media until midnight. Junseo barely noticed. He'd started coming home later, having client dinners that smelled like soju and avoidance. Sun Young noticed but said nothing, which was worse. The children noticed too. "Mom," Minji said one evening, "are we moving?" Felicia looked up from her laptop. "What? No, why would you think that?" "Kids at school are saying our building is being sold. They're saying we're getting rich and leaving." "That's not," Felicia stopped. "We're not moving." "But we might get rich." Daniel wandered over, 8 years old and already too perceptive. "Mrs. Beek said you met with the people who buy buildings." Felicia closed her laptop. "Adults sometimes have meetings, it doesn't mean anything is changing." "Everything is changing," Minji said quietly. "You're never home, Grandma doesn't talk anymore, Dad keeps looking at his phone and sighing, and people keep asking me questions I can't answer." Felicia's chest tightened. "What kind of questions?" "If we're Korean or African, if we belong here or somewhere else, if we're staying or going." Minji's voice was small. "I never know what to say." Felicia pulled her daughter close. "You belong exactly where you are, always." But even as she said it, she wondered if it was true. Did any of them really belong anywhere? Or were they all just temporary, waiting for the next disruption, the next question, the next person deciding their fate? 3 weeks passed. The fabric shipment was delayed, supply chain issues, another week minimum. Customer traffic remained slow. The pre-orders Felicia had expected never materialized. Bills were coming due, monthly supplier payments, utilities, loan interest. The shop's operating account was stretched thin. And then Min Young called. "Mrs. Han," she said pleasantly, "I wanted to check in. Have you had a chance to review the lease terms?" "We're still discussing internally," Felicia said. "Of course, I understand." A pause. "I should mention, we've had interest from other Itaewon property owners. 2 buildings on your block, actually, both interested in selling. We're evaluating whether to pursue those instead, given the delay in your decision." There it was. The pressure. The timeline. "We're moving toward a decision," Felicia said. "We just need." "I completely understand. These are big choices." Min Young's voice was sympathetic. "If it helps, we could offer bridge financing. We know transitions are expensive. If you need short-term capital while finalizing details, we have programs for situations exactly like this." Felicia's breath caught. Bridge financing. A loan, temporary, to help with immediate needs while paperwork processes. We'd advance a portion of the purchase price, say 500 million won, interest-free for 6 months, gives you breathing room. Then when the sale finalizes, it's deducted from the total payment. 500 million won. Enough to pay off the overdue inventory order. Enough to stabilize the operating account. Enough to make everything look fine while she figured out what to actually do. "That's generous," Felicia managed. "We're invested in positive relationships," Min Young said warmly. "We want this to work for everyone. Should I send over the bridge loan terms?" Felicia should have said no. She should have hung up. Should have recognized this for what it was, a hook disguised as help. Instead she said, "Yes, send them over." The bridge loan documents arrived by courier the next morning. Felicia read them in the shop's back room, door closed, hands shaking slightly. The terms were simple. 500 million won, advanced immediately. 0 interest for 6 months. Repayment required only if the property sale didn't finalize. And one small clause on page 4. Acceptance of bridge financing constitutes good faith commitment to negotiation and shall be interpreted as serious intent to proceed with the transaction. Felicia read it 3 times. It wasn't a binding contract, but it was an implication. If she took the money and then backed out, Haniel Urban Holdings would have legal grounds to claim she'd negotiated in bad faith. Could potentially sue for damages, legal fees, lost opportunity costs. It was a trap that looked like a lifeboat. But the inventory bills were due in 4 days. The supplier was threatening to cancel future credit if this order went unpaid. The operating account had 8 million won available. The bills totaled 15 million. She needed 7 million won immediately. 500 million won sat on the table. Felicia picked up her phone. Put it down. Picked it up again. She thought about calling Jun Seo, but he'd tell her to take it. He'd frame it as smart business strategy, temporary solution, practical thinking. She thought about calling her mother, but Clara would ask questions Felicia couldn't answer, would worry in ways Felicia didn't have capacity to manage. She thought about telling Sun Young. She didn't. Instead, at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon, Felicia Duncan Han signed the bridge loan documents. The money arrived in the shop's account within 2 hours. She paid the supplier bills immediately. Sent confirmation receipts. Updated the ledger. Made everything look stable and fine. Felicia just borrowed money from the people trying to take her home. That's the moment everything changed. This is Velara stories. We tell the ones where good intentions create impossible situations. Then she sat in the empty shop. Sun Young had gone home early with a headache and stared at her hands. Somewhere in the past month, she'd stopped gathering information. She'd started making commitments. And she didn't know exactly when the shift had happened. The fabric shipment finally arrived on a Thursday morning, 5 weeks after she'd ordered it. It was beautiful. Vibrant African prints in colors that sang, geometric patterns that felt like home and history simultaneously. Exactly the kind of exclusive inventory that should have generated excitement, social media buzz, customer appointments. Felicia unpacked each bolt carefully, arranged displays, took photographs, crafted the perfect Instagram post with lighting that made the fabrics glow. She tagged all the right accounts, used all the right hashtags. Posted. Waited. By end of day, 23 likes, 5 comments, 0 appointments booked. She tried again Friday. Different angles, different captions, different energy. Same result. Saturday brought 1 customer. A tourist who browsed for 15 minutes, complimented everything, bought nothing. Felicia stood among the beautiful fabric that nobody wanted and felt her throat tighten. This wasn't working. None of it was working. The inventory wouldn't sell fast enough. The bills would keep coming. The bridge loan would come due in 6 months. And she'd have to either finalize the sale or repay 500 million won she'd already spent. She was trapped. By choices that had seemed reasonable. By decisions made one small step at a time. By her own belief that she could manage everything, control everything, fix everything before anyone else had to worry. The trap had teeth now. Sunday evening, Sun Young came to find her in the shop's back room. Felicia was surrounded by ledgers, trying to calculate some mathematical miracle that would make the numbers work. You took money from them, Sun Young said. Not a question. A statement. Felicia's head snapped up. How did you? I check the business account every morning. I saw the deposit, 500 million won from Haniel Urban Holdings. Sun Young's face was granite. You took their money without telling me. It's a bridge loan, Felicia said quickly. Temporary, to cover the inventory order while we what? While we decide to sell, while we surrender. Sun Young's voice was sharp enough to cut. You borrowed money from the people trying to take our home. Do you understand what that means? It means we don't lose the suppliers. It means the shop stays operational while. It means we owe them. Sun Young moved closer. Debt creates obligation. You gave them leverage. You made us vulnerable. We were already vulnerable. The words burst out of Felicia before she could stop them. We're bleeding customers. Suppliers are nervous. The neighborhood is changing. I was trying to keep us stable long enough to. To what? Sun Young demanded. To sell, to accept their terms, to trade 40 years of independence for permission to be tenants in our own shop. I was trying to buy us time. You bought us chains. Sun Young's hands were shaking from age or anger, Felicia couldn't tell. I trusted you, I taught you this business, I let you make decisions because I thought you understood what we were protecting. But you, her voice cracked. You negotiated our future behind my back, with money, with secrets, with choices that weren't yours to make alone. Sun Young trusted Felicia completely, and Felicia just used that trust to trap them both. Would you have done the same? I honestly don't know if I could have resisted. They weren't yours to make alone either, Felicia heard herself say. Silence. Sun Young stared at her. This shop, Felicia continued, voice low and dangerous, wouldn't exist without my mother's money. Did you know that? 20 years ago, when you were nearly bankrupt, your words from the old ledgers, my mother sent her life savings. Anonymously, through informal channels, to save this business, to save your pride. Sun Young's face went pale. She never told you, Felicia said, because she knew you wouldn't accept help from an African woman you barely tolerated marrying your son, but her money kept the lights on. Her money paid suppliers, her money gave you time to rebuild. That's not. It's in the ledgers, unmarked deposits, consistent amounts, I found the bank records. Felicia was shaking now too. So when you talk about your shop, your legacy, your decisions, remember that my family has been holding this bridge up longer than you knew. Sun Young sat down slowly. For the first time in 15 years, she looked old. Why didn't she tell me? Sun Young whispered. Because she knew you needed to believe you did it alone, because she loved me enough to protect your pride. Felicia's throat was tight. Because that's what love looks like in our families, invisible work, silent sacrifice, bridges that nobody maintains. Footsteps on the stairs. Jun Seo appeared in the doorway, face flushed, tie loosened. I just got off the phone with Min Young, he said. They're accelerating the timeline. They need a decision by end of week. Apparently the other properties on our block already accepted offers. If we don't commit now, they're walking away. Felicia and Sun Young looked at each other. Then they both looked at Jun Seo. When did you call Min Young? Felicia asked carefully. This afternoon. I wanted to understand our position, wanted to see if we could negotiate better terms given the time pressure. He seemed pleased with himself. She said if we sign by Friday, they'll increase the offer to 5.1 billion won. Extra 300 million to compensate for the accelerated timeline. You negotiated without consulting me, Felicia said slowly. I was gathering information, Jun Seo said. Isn't that what you did? Isn't that what started all this? He was right. He'd learned from watching her. Learned that information gathering was just decision-making in disguise. That small steps led to big commitments. That secrets built their own momentum. We need to vote, Sun Young said suddenly. Family vote tomorrow morning, everyone present, no more secrets. Jun Seo nodded, agreed. They both looked at Felicia. She thought about the bridge loan that was already spent. The inventory that wasn't selling. The leverage she'd accidentally given to developers. The timeline that was accelerating. The choice she'd made 6 weeks ago to simply gather information. Agreed, she whispered. Monday morning arrived grey and cold. The family meeting happened in the shop's back room, surrounded by fabric and history and 40 years of accumulated choices. Sun Young, Jun Seo and Felicia sat around a small table. Technically, the decision belonged to Sun Young. She owned the building through inheritance from her late husband. But families aren't legal entities. They're ecosystems. And in ecosystems, every action creates ripples. I want to hear everyone, Sun Young said. Full honesty, Jun Seo first. Jun Seo straightened. I think we should sell, the money is life-changing. The lease terms protect the shop's legacy. We could invest proceeds wisely, generate passive income, relieve financial pressure on everyone. Mom could rest, the kids could study abroad, Felicia could, he paused, could stop carrying everything alone. His voice was gentle on that last part. Almost kind. Sun Young nodded, Felicia. Felicia's hands were folded on the table. She'd been awake all night thinking. I think, she stopped, I think I was wrong. Both of them looked at her. I thought I was protecting everyone by gathering information alone, by making small decisions that seemed manageable, by keeping problems contained until I could solve them. Her voice was steady but quiet, but each choice I made created new consequences, and each consequence required another choice, and each choice pulled us deeper into a situation I can no longer control. What are you saying? Junseo asked. I'm saying I created this crisis. Felicia looked at Sun Young. You were right, I gave them leverage, I made us vulnerable, I took money we now owe, and I did it all while believing I was being responsible and careful and strategic. You were trying to help, Sun Young said. I was trying to fix things without asking for help, Felicia corrected. There's a difference. Silence. Then Felicia pulled out a folder. Inside were documents she'd been reviewing since 3 a.m. The original unsigned partnership agreement her late father-in-law had drafted. The bank records showing her mother's investments. The current financial statements. The bridge loan terms. The lease agreement from Hanyul Urban Holdings. Here's what I learned, Felicia said. If we sell, we get money but lose autonomy. The lease terms look generous but give them control over our inventory, our design, our identity. We become decoration in someone else's hotel, authentic heritage as marketing aesthetic. She pulled out another document. But if we don't sell, we owe 500 million won in 6 months. The shop is barely profitable. Inventory isn't moving. Customers are already mourning our closure. The neighborhood is changing whether we resist or not. So we're trapped, Junseo said flatly. We're trapped by my choices, Felicia said. By my belief that I could handle everything alone, by my inability to ask for help until it was too late. Sun Young reached across the table and took Felicia's hand. The gesture shocked them both. You're not alone in this, Sun Young said quietly. I built this shop alone. After my husband died, I ran it alone. I believed independence was survival, but I taught you wrong. Independence without support is just isolation. Tears burned Felicia's eyes. I also learned something, Sun Young continued. Your mother's money, her investment, I didn't know, but I should have known. I should have asked where help came from instead of pretending I needed no help. She squeezed Felicia's hand. We both tried to be bridges alone. Bridges require both sides. Junseo looked between them. So what do we do? Felicia took a shaky breath. We need to call my mother. Clara Duncan arrived the next day. She took one look at the situation, the ledgers, the loan documents, the family tension, and started making phone calls. To Clara, family crises weren't problems to solve alone. They were community activations. Within 3 days, she'd assembled something extraordinary. A network of African diaspora business owners in Seoul. Korean customers who'd been loyal for decades. Former suppliers who owed Sun Young favors. Even some church members who understood what it meant to fight gentrification while fighting to belong. They created a plan. The shop would stay independent. But it would accept help. A small-scale crowdfunding campaign among loyal customers to buy out the bridge loan. A community investment pool offering minority shares in the business's future. A public stance against displacement, joining other Itaewon business owners resisting development pressure. A commitment to evolution instead of preservation, incorporating Felicia's fusion designs while honoring traditional roots. Most importantly, transparency. No more decisions made alone. No more secrets disguised as protection. No more bridges maintained by one person in isolation. Min Young called on Friday morning, expecting an answer. Felicia answered with Sun Young and Clara standing beside her. We're declining your offer, Felicia said clearly. We're staying, the building is not for sale. I'm disappointed to hear that, Min Young said, voice still smooth. Are you certain? We could potentially extend the timeline, discuss revised terms. We're certain. We'll repay the bridge loan within 6 months as contracted. Thank you for your interest, but this conversation is over. Felicia hung up. Her hands were shaking. But her voice had been steady. The aftermath wasn't clean or simple. The crowdfunding campaign raised 380 million won, not enough to cover the full bridge loan, but enough to make a significant payment. Sun Young sold some family heirlooms she'd been saving, quietly, without drama, contributing another 70 million. Clara offered the remaining 50 million, which they accepted this time with full acknowledgement and gratitude. The loan was repaid in 4 months. The shop stayed, but it changed. Felicia and Sun Young worked together to redesign the inventory, fusion pieces that honored both heritages. They hired Minji to help with social media. They brought in Daniel to assist with English-speaking customers. They made the shop a family business in reality, not just in name. The neighborhood changed too. 2 buildings on their block became boutique hotels, rents increased, some long-time businesses closed. But Han Thread and Heritage stayed. Not because they resisted change. Because they chose which changes to make themselves. 6 months after the vote, Felicia stood in the shop late one evening, folding fabric. Minji was updating Instagram stories. Daniel was helping Sun Young organize traditional silks. June Sia was upstairs making dinner, his night to cook. Clara was visiting, sitting in the corner with tea, watching her daughter work. "You look tired," Clara said. "I am tired," Felicia admitted, "but different tired, shared tired." "Tired you can rest from," Clara agreed, "not tired you carry alone." Felicia smiled. "Mom, thank you for the money, for everything." "That's what bridges do," Clara said simply. "They connect, but they need foundations on both sides, otherwise they collapse." Felicia thought about the past 6 months. The choice she'd made to attend one meeting. The consequences that spiraled. The secrets that compounded. The crisis that felt catastrophic. The community that gathered. The family that chose to stay. She understood now what she'd learned. Small choices weren't harmless. They were seeds. And seeds, once planted, grew into forests that changed entire landscapes. She'd planted seeds of secrecy, believing she was being responsible. They'd grown into forests of isolation that nearly destroyed everything. But communities could replant. Families could choose different seeds. Bridges could be rebuilt with better foundations. Foundations that acknowledged the hands that built them. The money that sustained them. The people who crossed them. And the weight they carried together. Felicia looked around the shop. This space that had nearly been sold, nearly been lost, nearly become someone else's aesthetic choice. It was still theirs. Imperfect, evolving, complicated. But theirs. Built on choices made together. On bridges maintained by many hands. On the understanding that belonging wasn't about being independent. It was about being held. And finally, after 15 years of holding everyone else, Felicia Duncan Han allowed herself to be held back. The weight of the bridge was shared now. And shared weight, she learned, was the only kind worth carrying. Here's what I keep thinking. Felicia's first choice was just gathering information. But information gathering is still a choice. Was she wrong to take that first meeting, or was she wrong to hide it? I'm genuinely not sure. What do you think?